Genocide is the killing of one person by another. Genocide is the deliberate and systematic destruction of a racial, political, cultural group, according to Webster's Dictionary. It is unfathomable to believe someone carried out the killings of a group who has little to no control over who they are by birth or circumstance. Yet there are those who have committed genocide. Genocide has been practiced for years all over the world. There are some circumstances of genocide that are better known than others for reasons such as media coverage, national involvement, or relatives that have been affected by this atrocity. There is no protection to keep this from happening, except security groups in other nations that decide that this practice is unfair and must not be tolerated. Oftentimes it is hard to accept troops going to war when nothing directly has been done to our country, but the support of our nation's troops and their allies are the defenders of these wrongs, shedding new light on the reason why nations should take interest in foreign policy. A few of the most noted genocides in chronological order are that of the Armenians, Jewish in Europe, the Tutsi in Rwanda, Muslims in Bosnia, and the tribes in Darfur of Sudan, according to January. Armenians, the Ottoman Turks, committed crimes of genocide against the Christian Armenians. The uprising was held by the Sultan Suleiman I. The Turks believed the Armenians supported their enemies in taking over the Ottoman Empire. Between the years of 1892 to 1918, 1 million Armenians have been killed. 250,000 escaped, 200,000 converted to Islam, and only 400,000 survived. Armenia was the first nation to accept Christianity in the predominantly Islamic Middle East. They held their own language and is an Indo-European language that is different from Turkish and different from Arabic. The hardships and multiples that faced these people were only brought them closer. Their religion and their language kept their identity despite their sufferings, according to authors Miller and Miller. The Armenians' greatest voice was that of their American ambassador, Morgenthau. Because of his actions, he was notified by the Turkish authorities that the treatment of Turkish subjects was Turkish government's purely domestic affairs, unless it was directly affecting Americans or American interests, that it was outside the concern of the American government. On September 3, 1915, Morgenthau telegraphed the State Department, and finally American aid began. This aid was not given from the government. This aid was given from the American people themselves. The government had nothing to do with it. The president at that time was more involved with World War I and did not want to take any part of this help. However, in 1987, the European Parliament rejected Turkey's request to be considered for admission to the European Community, and in May 1996, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to cut foreign aid to Turkey. Both of these decisions were made because of the denial of the Armenian genocide, according to author Bachmann. The Jewish in Europe. The National Socialist German Workers' Party, called Nazis, committed utterly horrifying crimes of genocide against all Jewish people in Europe. Their leader was Adolf Hitler. Nazis believed that Jewish people were the cause of every negative situation that befell any German Nazi, whether it be a horse throwing its horseshoe or a cow no longer producing milk. It was all blamed on the Jewish. The fall of the New York Stock Exchange caused many economic problems for Germany, and Hitler saw this as a way to attack from a different angle, through government. In 1993, the Nazi movement began when Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. This is strange due to the fact that Hitler had previously unsuccessfully tried 2 times to lead a movement and had served 5 years in prison for this very thing. But suddenly, when he becomes government, it's okay. The Holocaust is, in fact, an act of genocide. It took lives of over 6 million Jews. The Jewish were killed and their fat was made into soap, their hair was made from mattresses, and their bones for fertilizer. They were simply treated like cattle. This is strange to those to have these uses for their bodies when Hitler's goal was to seek German purity. But yet you're going to use their actual bodies to make soap that uses to clean your body. This makes no sense, and it's a complete contradiction. All of this information is according to author Levin. The Jewish people were awakened from their beds and taken to live in the ghettos. They were taken into gas chambers and burned, and after they were burned, their teeth were taken and their gold was sold. And in 1945, the Jewish were liberated. The Russians had arrived in a crematory in been found that the Germans were trying to hide all all the facts that this even happened. But the evidence was overwhelming. There was no way. In the Tutsi of Rwanda, there were two primary groups of people to occupy Rwanda, the Hutu and the Tutsi. The Hutu comprised of about 80% of the population, with only 15% being Tutsi. The other 5% were other groups. The smaller group, the Tutsi, is far more dominant due to their wealth. They were the owners of cattle, and cattle means wealth in Rwanda. In 1994, death of Rwandan president sparked a mass killing of the Tutsi people. It is estimated that 800,000 Tutsi had been slaughtered. The Hutu were told to rise up and kill. They were told that only eradication of all Tutsi, men, women, and children would rid Rwanda of their threat. Weapons were handed out. All prominent Tutsis were killed. The killings were quite thorough. Entire villages wiped clean of all of their inhabitants. Word would spread through neighboring villages, and slaughters and churches and hospitals were pursued. One of the main things that hurt these people during these uprisings, whenever they would arrive at actual villages, makeshift villages, is that they had no vaccines against common things such as cholera. So they were, in fact, died of these diseases. It is a mounting issue of some of the refugee camps that had the organization that they also had to bury these people. The Tutsis were not the only people killed in Rwanda. There were 10 Belgian soldiers who were killed by Hutu rebels. With this incident taking place, the UN Security Council took a vote and unanimously decided to withdraw most of the United Nations help in Rwanda. This is according to Arthur Fisnerick. Muslims of Bosnia. After the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1990, areas under the Soviet Union influence suffered political instability. Bosnian tribes succeed and the Serbian army invade. Serbians said they were coming to the aid of Serbians living in Bosnia that were mistreated by Muslim forces. This was a contradiction. Christians and Muslims lived in Bosnia for years. The Serbians were Orthodox Christians and felt that they needed to rid the area of the Muslims. The women there went through their own hell. They were raped by Serbian soldiers, and many of them had children by the Serbian soldiers. The ones that could not actually have an abortion, that had the children were not loved. They were acts of war. And in tribes of Darfur and Sudan, much like the genocide of Rwanda, the conflict started between two groups of farmers who were more like the African nomads, more like the Arabs. The only things, they were all mainly Muslim. In April 2003, the Darfur rebels thought they could make the government listen to their pleas for intervention between the two groups fighting over land. The government said that they had national war authority, and the government was willing to able to try all of those cases. However, this cannot be done. You can't wipe out a whole colony of people. Therefore, nothing is really being done. There are many common denominators among these atrocities. The most common denominators are the crimes of genocide on innocent people and a lack of support from government to include the U.S. to stop them. Several occasions that prevent the U.S. from being involved with elections of presidents that wanted to make sure they were able to make it through to a second term. These political moves did nothing to help their suffering from genocide. It was done to save their own positions. It is to be commended that the U.S. Security Council tried to be involved. Oftentimes they were too late, and the majority of the damage had been done. The truth of the matter is that many of these conflicts had gone on for years. While some are not called genocide, they are by definition, in fact, genocide. The American Indians are the biggest example that we have all seen from our own eyes in America. Instead of holding someone responsible for their actions against these people, it is chosen to not coin the actions of genocide, as if saying it is okay. If there was not guilt involved, why would there be programs for the American Indians through our casinos here in the United States? Genocide acts against people are hard to accept. The only hope for the day to come where everyone realizes that there are just people is when the light off, there are no language spoken. We are saint.